She didn't shake. Not once. Standing on the sun-bleached hard courts of Indian Wells with the weight of an entire nation's expectations bearing down on the opposite side of the net. The most dangerous server in women's tennis, a Grand Slam champion, a player who had already dismantled half the draw without dropping her composure. Alexandra Eala did not shake. She stood at the baseline, 20 years old, ranked 31st in the world, and she played the match of her generation. This is that story. By the end of this, you'll understand what was actually happening in Eala's mind during the moments when every logical voice in the room said the match was over, and why she kept playing as if she hadn't heard a single one of them. You'll understand why Elena Rybakina, the ice-cold, technically immaculate force who had spent the last 18 months rewriting what dominance looks like on the WTA Tour, came undone in the California desert in a way that no one... It's not her coaching staff, not her national federation, not even her most vocal critics could have scripted. And you'll understand the one thing about Alexandra Eala's journey that changes everything you think you know about how a player becomes great, and why this result, astonishing as it was, should never have surprised anyone who was really paying attention. Stay with this one. Every part matters. To understand why this match detonated the way it did, you have to first understand the world that existed before the first ball was struck. The BNP Paribas Open at Indian Wells is not just a prestigious tournament on the WTA calendar. It is the 5th Grand Slam in everything but name. The desert heat, the Stadium 1 atmosphere, the prize money structure, the seedings drawn from the rankings that govern every professional woman's financial reality on tour. And it all converges here in ways that make Indian Wells a pressure test unlike almost anywhere else. Players arrive carrying the psychological weight of the season's opening stretch. Their bodies are either sharp or already fraying. Their minds are either settled or quietly unraveling. There is nowhere to hide in the desert. Elena Rybakina arrived as the undisputed second best player on the planet. World number 3 in the rankings, yes. But anyone who had watched women's tennis closely over the preceding 12 months understood that the numerical gap between Rybakina and the field had been shrinking in her favor, not expanding away from it. She had won the 2023 Australian Open, her second Grand Slam title. She had won this very tournament, Indian Wells, 2 years prior. She possessed perhaps the most architecturally perfect serve in the women's game. As a weapon so devastating that entire match strategies were built around simply surviving it long enough to find footing. Her flat ground strokes were calibrated for this surface, for this altitude, for this exact moment. She was not just the favorite, she was the kind of favorite that makes opponents recalibrate their ambitions before they walk onto the court. Rybakina's relationship with Kazakhstan, the country she represents, despite having been born in Moscow and trained in Russia's junior. The development system had always carried a particular weight. Her 2022 Wimbledon title had been a defining cultural moment for Kazakhstani sport. She was treated not merely as an athlete, but as a symbol, a national asset. And that symbolic weight was not invisible to Rybakina. It traveled with her. You saw it in the quiet precision with which she carried herself in press conferences, in the controlled stoicism that the tennis world had come to read as confidence, but was perhaps something more. Layered than that, there was a small seed planted in that stoicism, something that would not reveal itself fully until the third set of this match. Hold that thought. Alexandra Eala's path to this moment had been written in a different language entirely. Born in the Philippines, groomed through the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca. Yes, that Nadal Academy, the one that processes young talent with the methodical intensity of a European football club. Eala had been dismantling expectations. In juniors tennis, since she was 16, she won the U.S. Open junior title in 2022. She collected ITF titles across multiple continents before her body had finished developing. The trajectory was obvious, but trajectory is not arrival, and the WTA main draw at the elite level is a different universe from junior competition. competition. The hours are longer, the opponents are stronger, the mental game is exponentially more demanding, and the economics of tour life, travel costs, coaching fees, the grinding. Arithmetic of ranking points versus prize money are a constant undercurrent beneath every professional performance. What Eala had demonstrated in the weeks before Indian Wells was not merely talent, it was tactical evolution. In Abu Dhabi and Dubai during the Middle East swing, she had recovered from match point down deficits in ways that suggested she was developing something that rankings alone could never measure: the capacity to stay present when the scoreboard is lying to her about who is winning. But a third round match against Rybakina at Indian Wells was a different magnitude entirely, and then something no one predicted happened. The first set belonged to the machine. Rybakina's serve was functioning exactly as designed. Aces on break points, first serve percentages that made rallies feel optional. Her flat backhand was finding corners that seemed geometrically unavailable. She took the first set 6-3, and in the press box in the commentary booths, the narrative was already being filed away under the category of expected outcome. A promising young player, a good showing against a top 3 seed, a learning experience. Move on. But watch what happens in the first game of the second set. Eala holds, then she breaks. Not with a risky winner, not with a flash of teenage audacity, but with something more unsettling: patience. She constructs the rally, identifies the pattern, and extracts the error. It is not what a 20-year-old is supposed to do against Elena Rybakina. You are supposed to attack, make mistakes, and get punished. Eala was doing none of those things. She was playing a chess match against someone who typically wins by refusing to play chess, and Rybakina noticed. But that's not the part that matters. What matters is what happened between points. And this is where the cameras miss the story, because they're zoomed in on the scoreboard and the baseline. Is not on the body language of a player recalibrating in real time. Rybakina began taking longer between serves. The precision that had defined the first set began to develop small cracks. A double fault in a key game, a forehand that sailed long when the direction was clear. These are not just statistical anomalies. In a player as technically controlled as Rybakina, these are distress signals. The machine was beginning to register that its operating assumptions were incorrect. Eala closed the second set, 6-4 now. The mathematics of the match had shifted completely. A final set, best of 3 in the Indian Wells heat against a 20-year-old who was somehow getting more settled as the match went on. This is where pressure in women's tennis reveals its true nature, and where the WTA's often underestimated psychological complexity becomes the only thing that matters. Because pressure doesn't land equally on both players. It lands proportionally to what each player stands to lose. Rybakina was not supposed to be in a third set. The story of this tournament did not include a third set against a player ranked 31st. Every loss carries a different weight in the ranking system, and a third round exit at Indian Wells, a combined event that distributes enormous points to deep runs, was not something her season could absorb without consequence. The ranking math, invisible to most viewers but acutely present to every professional player, was now part of the pressure landscape. One break of serve could define the entire match. One moment of hesitation at the wrong time could end a streak. The stoicism that had always read as invulnerability was being asked to carry more than it may have been built to hold. Eala broke first in the third. It happened the way the best moments in tennis happen, not with a single brilliant winner, but with a sequence. A deep return that forced Rybakina back. Is a short ball that Eala attacked with clean, aggressive geometry. A passing shot that caught the line 3 points in a row that each required a different skill, all executed without visible panic. The crowd, which had been politely respectful of both players, tilted. There is a sound a crowd makes when they sense they are watching something historical, and you could hear it. What happened next rewrote everything. Rybakina did not fold. That is the crucial detail that gets lost in the headline version of this story. She broke back, she held, she competed with the fierce technical excellence that had made her world number 3, and she fought her way to 4-4 in the third set. 40 minutes of accumulated effort had produced a dead-level final phase, and in that moment, the match stopped being about tennis. It became a question about identity. Who are you when the plan is failing? Who are you when the match you were supposed to win has escaped the structure you imposed on it, and becomes something wild and uncontrollable? For Rybakina, the answer to that question had always been disciplined, composed, precise. But discipline and composure are built for situations you have prepared for. What Eala was doing was something Rybakina's preparation may not have fully accounted for, because you cannot prepare for an opponent who is playing without fear. Eala had nothing to lose, not in the careless sense that phrase is usually meant. She had plenty to gain, plenty to fight for, but in the psychological sense that her identity was not structured around being the favorite. She had never been the expected winner of this match. She had never been the player with a narrative to protect. Every game she won was surplus. Every hold of serve was a discovery rather than a requirement. The lightness of that position, the competitive freedom it creates, is one of the most underestimated forces in professional sport. Down a break, then level, then serving for the match. 2 points from victory. Eala steps to the line, and the crowd holds its breath. The desert air is still. The whole weight of the tournament, of the Kazakhstani sports media, of the Filipino fan communities who have been tracking every ball of this match through phone screens in Manila and Cebu and Davao, all of it compressed into the next few seconds. She tosses the ball, pauses, serves, and then it is over. 6-3, 4-6, 6-4, final score, 3 sets, 2 hours and 12 minutes. One of the most significant results in Alexandra Eala's professional career, and one of the most jarring early exits in Elena Rybakina's recent history. In Kazakhstan, the reaction was immediate and unsparing. Sports headlines used the language of catastrophe, desert disaster, unthinkable defeat. National hero exits to player ranked outside the top 30. In forums dissected every double fault, every missed first serve, every uncharacteristic error, as if identifying the precise moment of mechanical failure would somehow make the outcome legible. There was grief in that scrutiny, the grief of a country whose sporting identity had been partially organized around Rybakina's stoic reliability. But grief, too, is a form of love, and Kazakhstan's love for its tennis champion was visible in every overwrought headline. In forums dissected every double fault, every missed first serve, every uncharacteristic error, as if identifying the precise moment of mechanical failure would somehow make the outcome legible. There was grief in that scrutiny, the grief of a country whose sporting identity had been partially organized around Rybakina's stoic reliability. But grief, too, is a form of love, and Kazakhstan's love for its tennis champion was visible in every overwrought headline. In the Philippines, the reaction was something else entirely. Eala is not just an athlete to her country, she is a signal. She is the answer to a question Filipinos have been asking about their place in individual sports at the global elite level. A question about whether the conditions that produce dominance, the academies and the resources and the institutional support, could be assembled around a Filipino player from the ground up. The answer on this afternoon in California was yes. Unambiguously yes. The celebrations online, the reaction from the Philippine National Olympic Committee, the message from the Nadal Academy, it all pointed towards something larger than a third-round tennis result. But here is the part about Alexandra Eala that changes how you see everything. She had been in this position before, not this exact match, not this exact opponent, but this exact psychological situation. The one where the external world decides the match is over, and the player has to choose whether to agree. In Dubai, weeks before Indian Wells, she had been staring at a deficit that statistically suggested the match was finished. She did not agree. In Abu Dhabi, same situation, same refusal. What you are watching in Eala is not the emergence of a talent that was previously hidden. What you are watching is the full activation of a player who was built deliberately and methodically to function when functioning is hardest. The Nadal Academy does not produce timid players. Rafael Nadal's own career, the comeback wins, the fifth set ferocity, the refusal to concede the narrative of a match to an opponent or an injury, is the living curriculum. Ella did not simply absorb technical instruction in Mallorca. She absorbed a competitive philosophy. And on this afternoon, on Stadium 1 at Indian Wells, that philosophy was the decisive factor. Rybakina will return. She is too good, too young at 25, too technically complete to be defined by a single third-round loss. Her season has many chapters remaining. Indian Wells was not the end of her story. It was an interruption, a recalibration, a reminder that no player owns a tournament until they own every match within it. She will serve aces in the next tournament. She will make finals. She will contend for Grand Slams. The machine will be rebuilt and will run again. But Elena Rybakina will remember this match, not because she lost, but because of how she lost, not to power, not to pace, not to a serve that outgunned hers, but to patience, to a player who outthought her, who refused to blink, who stood at the baseline of one of the biggest courts in the sport and played for 2 hours and 12 minutes without a single visible trace of the fear that everyone watching assumed she must be feeling. That is what the scoreline captures. What it cannot capture is what this match meant for the architecture of women's tennis going forward. A generation of players who learned their craft outside the traditional European and American pathways, players from Southeast Asia, from West Africa, from parts of Latin America that the tour's commercial apparatus has historically underserved, watched Eala walk off that court, and they recalibrated their own ambitions. If she can do it here, the logic runs, then here is possible. The story of this match was never really about a ranking upset. It was never about Rybakina's serve percentage or Eala's forehand geometry or the conditions at Indian Wells. Though all of those things were real and mattered, it was about what gets built in a player over years of quiet, unglamorous work. And what emerges when the moment finally arrives that was worth building toward. 20 years old, ranked 31st, world number 3, dismantled, not with anger, not with bravado, not with the kind of visible desperation that collapses under pressure, with patience, with precision, with a clarity that looked, for all the world, like she had known the outcome long before anyone else in the stadium dared to believe it. The next time Alexandra Eala walks onto a court as the underdog, remember this match, not the score. Not the statistics. Remember that she didn't shake. Remember that the desert sun blazed and the crowd noise swelled and the most dangerous server in women's tennis stood 12 meters away, and she stood at the baseline 20 years old and she played as if she had been waiting her whole life to be exactly here, because she had been. And she is just getting started. She is a trailblazer, a beacon of hope, and a source of immense national pride. Every time she steps onto the court, she carries a weight in the expectations of millions of Filipinos who wake up at ungodly hours to stream her matches. So today, she gave them a masterpiece. She gave them a performance that will be talked about for decades. The grit, the resilience, the sheer tactical brilliance she displayed to neutralize Rybakina's power. It was nothing short of legendary. This wasn't a lucky win. This wasn't a case of Rybakina just handing the match over with double faults. EALA went out there and took it. She absorbed the pace. She extended the rallies. She forced Rybakina to hit 1 extra ball, 2 extra balls, 3 extra balls, until frustration boiled over and the errors crept in. To truly understand the magnitude of this upset, you have to understand the context of the BNP Paribas Open. Indian Wells is often called the fifth Grand Slam for a reason. The field is deep, the stakes are massive, and the conditions are notoriously tricky. Eala went out there and took it. She absorbed the pace. She extended the rallies. She forced Rybakina to hit 1 extra ball, 2 extra balls, 3 extra balls until frustration boiled over and the errors crept in. To truly understand the magnitude of this upset, you have to understand the context of the BNP Paribas Open. Indian Wells is often called the fifth Grand Slam for a reason. The field is deep. The stakes are massive, and the conditions are notoriously tricky. The air is dry, the ball flies to the desert atmosphere, but the court surface itself is incredibly gritty and slow. It creates a high bounce, it demands repeatable power. You cannot just blast your way through opponents here without a profound level control and tactical nuance. Rybakina's game, built on flat aggressive strikes and early ball striking, usually thrives when she's carrying supreme confidence, allow her to hit through the heavy conditions, and she arrived with that confidence. But Eala brilliantly used those exact conditions against her, realized early on that if she tried to match Rybakina's power, she would be blown off the court. Instead, she turned the match into a physical and mental marathon. She used the slow, high bouncing courts to her advantage, looping heavy topspin deep into the corners, pushing Rybakina back, denying her the ability to step inside the baseline and dictate on her own terms. This match was a masterclass in disruption. It was a testament to the fact that tennis is not just played with a racket, it is played between the ears. It is a game of psychological warfare, of momentum shifts, of tiny invisible adjustments that turn the tide of a battle. Eala looked at the mountain that was Elena Rybakina, a mountain that had crushed so many others this season, and she systematically dismantled it rock by rock. She showed the world that speed, defense, tactical flexibility, and an unbreakable spirit can conquer raw, unadulterated power. This is the beauty of our sport. This is why we watch. Because on any given Sunday, or in this case, a stunning afternoon in California, the script can be torn to shreds, and a new star can write their own history in bold, unforgettable letters. So how exactly did she do it? How did a 20-year-old from Manila conquer the reigning queen of the Australian Open? Let's transition into the deep dive and break down this absolute classic of a tennis match, set by set, game by game. And tactic by tactic, we have to start by looking at the atmosphere before a single ball was even struck. The stadium was absolutely packed, buzzing with that unique Indian Wells energy. You had the sun beating down, the shadows slowly creeping across the court, and a very distinct divide in the crowd. On one side, you had the tennis purists expecting a clinical, straightforward masterclass from the world number 3. On the other side, an incredibly vocal, passionate contingent of Filipino fans waving flags, chanting, bringing an electric Davis Cup-like atmosphere to a second-round WTA match. Eala thrives on this energy. She feeds on it. You can see it in her eyes during the coin toss, while Rybakina maintained her trademark icy demeanor, looking almost bored by the proceedings, a look that usually spells doom for her opponents. Eala was bouncing on her toes, locked in, her eyes sharp. The first set began exactly how the odds makers predicted. Rybakina came out serving absolute bombs. We are talking first serves consistently clocking in the high teens, hitting the corners with pinpoint precision. Eala could barely get her racket on the ball in the first 2 service games. Rybakina was holding it love, taking less than 90 seconds to breeze through her games. When Eala served, Rybakina was stepping returns down the line. Within the blink of an eye, Rybakina had secured a double break and was leading for love. To anyone watching, it looked like a massacre in the making. It looked like Eala was completely overwhelmed by the occasion and the sheer weight of Rybakina's shot. The commentators were already talking about who Rybakina would face in the next round, but this is where we have to talk about Alexandra Eala's mental fortitude. A lesser player, a younger, less experienced player, would have completely folded. They would have tanked the set, accepted the bagel, and hoped to regroup in the second. Not a 4-log down, she didn't panic, she didn't start overhitting. Instead, she took a deep breath, looked over to her player's box, nodded, and went to work. She started to dramatically change her return position. Instead of trying to hold the baseline against Rybakina's first serve, Eala stepped way back, almost into the California desert brush, giving herself an extra fraction of a second to read the trajectory and just get the ball back in play. It wasn't about hitting a clean return winner. It was simply about starting the point. And once the point started, executed a brilliant tactical shift. She realized that Rybakina loves pace. Rybakina feeds on hard, flat balls. She uses the opponent's pace to redirect her own devastating shots. So EALA stopped giving her pace, almost into the California desert brush, giving herself an extra fraction of a second to read the trajectory and just get the ball back in play. It wasn't about hitting a clean return winner. It was simply about starting the point. And once the point started, executed a brilliant tactical shift. She realized that Rybakina loves pace. Rybakina feeds on hard, flat balls. She uses the opponent's pace to redirect her own devastating shots. So EALA stopped giving her pace. She started hitting heavy looping, high bouncing top spin balls deep into the center of the court on the slow Indian Wells surface. These balls sat up high out of Rybakina's ideal strike zone. Rybakina, forced to generate all her own pace off high balls, started to look uncomfortable. Her timing, which had been immaculate for her first 4 games, began to fracture. She started spraying forehands long. She netted backhands. Eala managed to break back once holding her own serve with gritty, grueling baseline rallies, making it 4-2. Rybakina eventually closed out the first set 6-3, but the momentum had visibly shifted. Eala had drawn blood. She had proven that she could hang in the rallies. She had planted a seed of doubt in the mind of the world number 3. Moving into the second set, that seed of doubt blossomed into a full-blown crisis for the Kazakh star. Eala came out firing. Eala managed to break back once holding her own serve with gritty, grueling baseline rallies, making it 4-2. Rybakina eventually closed out the first set 6-3, but the momentum had visibly shifted. Eala had drawn blood. She had proven that she could hang in the rallies. She had planted a seed of doubt in the mind of the world number 3. Moving into the second set, that seed of doubt blossomed into a full-blown crisis for the Kazakh star. Eala came out firing. She had completely decoded Rybakina's rhythm. Eala's footwork in this set was nothing short of mesmerizing. She was covering the court like a shadow, anticipating Rybakina's aggressive down-the-line shots before Rybakina even struck the ball. Eala began to employ the drop shot with devastating effectiveness. Rybakina is a tall, incredibly powerful player, but her forward movement, her transition from the baseline to the net, is arguably the one slight vulnerability in her otherwise flawless game. Eala exposed it mercilessly. She would push Rybakina deep into the backhand corner with that heavy topspin, and the moment Rybakina was anchored behind the baseline, Eala would feather a gorgeous backhand slice drop shot perfectly over the net. Rybakina was forced to lunge, sprint, and constantly shift her massive frame forward and backward. The desert heat combined with his brutal physical interrogation started to wear the Wimbledon champion down. Eala broke Rybakina early in the second set to go up 3-1. The crowd was going absolutely out of their minds. Every point I won was met with deafening roars. Rybakina, to her credit, tried to fight fire with fire. She tried to hit the ball even harder, trying to blast her way out of the tactical trap had set. But the harder she hit, the more I absorbed defensive squash shots. Her ability to stretch out into a full split and miraculously block a 100-mile forehand back deep into the court. was demoralizing. Rybakina's unforced error count skyrocketed. Her first serve percentage plummeted. She looked rushed, irritated, and crucially out of answers. Eala served out the second set flawlessly, taking at 6-4. We had a decider on our hands, and the energy in the stadium was absolutely crackling. The third set was a woe of attrition. It was one of the highest quality sets of tennis we have seen all year. Both players knew exactly what was on the line. The turning point came at for all was serving. Rybakina hit 3 consecutive return winners, just absolute lasers at painted the lines to set up triple breakpoint love 40. This was it. This was the moment the world number 3 was supposed to assert her dominance, break the upstart spirit, and serve out the match. The stadium fell dead silent, but Alexandra Eala, with ice in her veins, produced the service game of her life. First, a heavy kick serve out wide at Ryana shanked into the stands, 15-40. Next, a grueling 25-shot rally where Eala refused to miss, eventually forcing a backhand error from Rybakina, 30-40. On the third breakpoint, Eala did the unthinkable. She served and volleyed against one of the best returners in the world. On breakpoint down in the third set, Eala hit a slice serve out wide and charged a net, putting away a crisp forehand volley, deuce. The crowd erupted. Rybakina looked shell-shocked. Eala reeled off the next 2 points to hold serve, making it 5-4. That hold broke Rybakina. You could see the air leave her tires, serving to stay in the match at 45. The pressure was entirely on the Kazakh's shoulders. Eala, sensing blood in the water, played a flawless return game. She attacked Rybakina's second serve ruthlessly, stepping inside the baseline and driving the ball deep down the middle, robbing Rybakina of any angles. At 15-40, double match point for the Filipina. The rally that ensued encapsulated the entire match. Rybakina hit a massive inside-out forehand, a shot that would be a clean winner against 99% of the tour. Eala scrambled, slid on the gritty hard court, and threw up a massive defensive lob. The ball hung in the desert air for what felt like an eternity. Rybakina let it bounce, set up for a high forehand put away, and incredibly netted it. Game, set, match. Alexandra Eala. The moment the ball hit the net, Eala dropped her racket, felt her knees, and buried her face in her hands. The stadium absolutely exploded. The roar was deafening. It was a mixture of pure, unadulterated shock from the neutral fans and absolute euphoria from the Filipino supporters. Rybakina walked the net quickly, gave a brief, respectful handshake, and practically sprinted off the court, clearly furious with her performance. But unable to deny the brilliance of what had just happened to her, looking at the post-match statistics, the story is incredibly clear. Rybakina hit more winners. Yes, she hit 12 aces, but she also hit 54 unforced errors. A massive anomaly for a player of her caliber. Eala, on the other hand, played a remarkably clean match, hitting 22 winners to just 18 unforced errors. Eala won an astonishing 58% of the points on Rybakina's second serve. She neutralized a greatest weapon a game and turned it into a liability. This victory is going to send Eala's ranking skyrocketing. She entered this tournament at a career-high number 31, but after securing the massive points that come with a third-round appearance at a WTA 1000 event and taking down a top 3 seed, she is knocking firmly on the door of the top 20, but more than a ranking points, this would provide an incalculable boost of confidence. The Eala now knows, and more importantly, the rest of the locker room now knows that she can beat the absolute best in the world on the biggest stages. She is no longer just a dangerous floater in the draw. She is a legitimate threat to win these massive titles. For Elena Rybakina, this is a bitter, frustrating setback. She was carrying so much momentum, so much form, and to be derailed this early in a tournament she loves will require some serious reflection. She has to figure out what happened to her forehand under pressure today. She has to figure out why she couldn't adapt when her plan A was taken away. She will undoubtedly bounce back. She is too good, too professional, and too talented not to. But this loss exposes a blueprint on how to beat her. If you can withstand an initial barrage, if you can vary the pace and height of the ball, and if you can drag her into a physical, grueling contest, the Ice Queen can be melted. The rest of the tour was definitely taking notes today. As we wrap up this massive deep dive, I find myself just shaking my head in awe of what we witnessed. This is why we dedicate so much time to this sport. This is why we analyze the rankings, the draws, and the matchups, because underneath all the statistics and the logic, tennis is a profoundly human endeavor subject to the sheer willpower and the raw, unpredictable emotion of the athletes on the court. Alexandra Eala didn't just beat Elena Rybakina today, she authored a new chapter in the history of Philippine sports. She proved that no mountain is too high, no opponent is too intimidating, and no deficit is insurmountable if you possess the courage to keep fighting. Now the question becomes, how far Alexandra Eala go in this tournament? The draw is completely opened up for her. The players in her quarter will be looking at this result and feeling a mix of relief that they don't have to face Rybakina and sheer terror at the prospect of facing the red-hot Filipina who just took her down. Eala has a momentum, she has the crowd, and she has the game. The sky is absolutely the limit. She needs to recover physically. That was a brutal, nearly 3-hour marathon, but adrenaline is a powerful thing if she can maintain this level of tactical discipline and defensive brilliance. There's no reason she cannot make a deep historic run all the way to the final weekend here in Indian Wells. As for Rybakina, the road leads to Miami. She will have a few weeks to rest, recover, and recalibrate before the second half of the Sunshine Double. She was a finalist in Miami last year, and she will be highly motivated to prove that today was just an unfortunate blip on the radar. The pressure will be immense, but champions are forged in how they respond to adversity. And I want to hear from every single one of you watching this. What did you think of this monumental upset? Did you see this coming even for a second? What was the turning point of the match for you? Do you think Alexandra Eala has what it takes to win the entire BNP Paribas Open? And what does Elena Rybakina need to fix before she steps onto the courts of Miami? Get down into the comment section right now and let your voice be heard. The debate is going to be fierce, and I cannot wait to read your analysis. If you enjoyed this incredibly detailed breakdown of one of the greatest matches of the year, please smash that like button. It tells the algorithm that we are doing something right and helps push this tennis content out to a wider audience. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our immediate post-match analyses, our tournament previews, and our deep dives into the tactical nuances of the beautiful game. We are going to be covering every single angle of this Indian Wales tournament as the drama continues to unfold.